just to talk about the overall budget here, and just the 3.14%, you guys feel that, I don't even know how you guys have come here with a straight face and bring that in here, with the surpluses we've had. I mean, it's just like, I'm just saying the overall thing, and I'm not saying we don't need any of these teachers, anything. If I was setting a budget, which I do every year for my stuff, my companies, I would start with that minimum and work backwards. I would take off the 3,000 for the 40, I don't know how many kids there are, 15 kids or whatever it is, 45,000. But say you start with that, I can't even fathom how you guys can come in with almost $1 million when we have, every year we have a surplus. And substantial surplus. I mean, it was almost 900 last year, till it took 300,000 for capital. Year before, I don't know what it's called, but substantial amount. And you guys come in,
And I think you know why they have the surpluses, and we discussed that, and it's unforeseen things, and I don't think it's fair to all people out there that have put the
So what's the
time into
history
the
about?
budget. What?
has it been one every time?
It's better than a deficit every time.
I'm just saying, has there been one?
Yes.
Can we take the smallest and cut it in half? How about that?
But it's been in personnel, so what do you
Well, then
got?
who's negotiating the contracts? I mean, I look at, I'm just like, it's just
What is the
like a
surplus?
fantasy book, in my
We don't have,
opinion.
at this point, I can't
Here's the
project.
thing about surpluses.
Somebody asked, what was the surplus this year?
We don't know.
Right
No,
now,
but here's what
I
we
can't
do know.
project.
Here's what we do know, and we have the budget in front of us that has the budget, and it has the actual as of now. Now, technically, that actual should be 58% of the budget, depend if it was spread evenly across the months. So some of it is not 58% right now. So maybe and some of it is a lot lower, we're spending a lot less, some of it's at 20%, some of it's at 40%. So maybe the better question is, are there things that are not cyclical in this budget where we could actually point to some of these and say, okay, we know that 90% of that budget is spent in May. Because personnel, it should be cyclical, but some isn't. There's like professional development in here, that's a $6,000 budget, and there's been $33 spent. So those are areas that maybe we could cut. So when you see that, and then you see another $6,000, so what is not cyclical? What are you expecting to spend that's not spread, 1/12
But
every
even,
month?
just one thing, like you have here for last year, that's the budget number, but then you go to the audit number, it's 29 million, whatever. I mean, there's another, that's $715,000 difference than what you guys have written here to what we actually is on our, what they actually had in the audit.
So that's a valid question, but so you just ask the question rather than saying,
Well, I'm getting
you
to
can't
it.
come in here with a straight face.
Well, maybe if you let me get to it, Val, I can give a chance. And I understand maybe I didn't word it correctly, and you said it wrong, but I'm saying there's things like that just, I looked through it quickly. We just got these things, but it,
The two areas
crazy.
that overlap, and I have to agree that I have a hard time looking at the experiences that we've had with regard to the number of retirements over the course of the last 3 years. Because the retirement number and the insurance savings are two things that I don't have a guarantee on. I have one retirement at this point. So again, to Val's point, I have to calculate based on what I have. What I do have, and what I have done over the last several years, is to do some trending of who's eligible to retire. And that doesn't always happen. People who are, we've been all over the place in terms of teachers who were eligible and stayed on 2 or 3 extra years. Teachers who were not, that from my vantage point, wouldn't have been eligible, chose to retire for either health or spousal reasons or whatever. But the reality is that looking at that trend, the number of potential retirements are much smaller this year than they have been over the last 3 years, which accounted for at least half or better of the surplus. So in terms of the two areas that the potential for surplus is in salaries and in the insurance based on our claims rates.
It doesn't look like insurance is going to have so much of
cost centers, Jack, quick and dirty, I was gonna say this, I didn't get a chance. Joel, based on the prorating, where we are, the encumbrances, the prorating, we're looking at about $82,000 surplus right now, if everything holds together for the rest of the year. Pearson, you're actually 19 in the hole. Elliott, you're at 59. Morgan's at 40. Your special ed surplus, and I don't know if we've had any kids come into the roof that weren't in. It's about 148. Central office 74. Maintenance 31. Athletics 9. District-wide about 56. That comes over to 41.
And that, I guess I haven't done the same level of analysis that you have at this point, but based on the numbers that you're reading out, those are based on encumbering salaries through the end of the year at this point. But it doesn't take into account the expenditures in those other areas. Those are just the numbers you're reading, or at least as I'm looking at them, are the numbers that are currently our balance in each of those cost centers.
Plus the encumbrance, minus the encumbrances.
But it doesn't address those expenditures spread out.
I don't know, and I was talking today about, I don't know if there's things that you get hit at the end of the year with, you get pay stuff forward through the year, I don't know, this is raw.
So again, I think the two issues that aren't accounted for here are the adjustments in the secretary's salary, and that's going to be a retroactive to the beginning of the year. And then I think the other piece is that recognizing, and I don't have a final number at this point from insurance relative to projected claims for the rest of the year and then projected increase for next year. So, again, the point is that can we go back in and there are the concrete things, the instructional supplies and textbooks that could be purchased now to reduce.
You have to have the money to do it.
But the other, there are a couple other areas that have that were larger. We're not done with at this point going forward. So I think the best case scenario that you're talking about, looking at just the raw numbers of 480, I don't think it's going to be that much in the end, but I think at this point in February, it's still a little premature to make a number.
But unfortunately, by the charter, we have to come up with an estimate of surplus in the budget process, and here we are. It can go as far as to the public hearing, and then after the public hearing, obviously the Board of Ed, we should hopefully get a better number by then. The Board of Finance can adjust based on if there is a better number. And again, it's a rough number. I'm looking at potentially, could we take the 109 out of the textbooks and move it into and encumber it before the end of the fiscal year to do that purchase, and then and I only came up with 103 out of capital. Again, cutting that number a little bit less than half to be conservative. And I'm looking at things that to me look like you can get moving now on, which would be the air conditioning, the Joel Pool, Blue Wing, the slate for the main roof over here, Pearson, and the sink cabinet replacement. And the lever hardware, as I know, is an ongoing thing. So that's something that shouldn't be that hard to get into motion prior to the end of the fiscal year so you can encumber the money. And that's all I came up with potential. And I know we don't have line item control. I'm just trying to, I hate to come in and just say, cut $200,000, you figure out. I try to look at it as what's going to least impact the kids on a day-to-day basis in their learning. I'm not saying don't buy textbooks. Obviously, we need to buy textbooks. And I'm not saying not to do the roof work and do the air conditioning. I don't want to see stuff taken away from extracurricular. I just want to see stuff taken away from the personnel that are actually directly involved with the learning process.
Well, of course not. Unfortunately, we have to present the town with a budget that's reasonably going to pass, and I guess that's really the dilemma right now. That's the problem.
Jack, if it didn't pass it at this, where would you think you would go after for cuts?
That's a hard one. I know. I
I
couldn't
think,
say either.
think that the issue is that we have, what we've done at this point is present something that we think is reasonable based on the needs that we've identified. So, on surface, we would certainly relook or re-examine elements of the personnel requests. I think there are some that have to be in there that can't be reduced. If we had
Existing personnel or add, are you talking about
the
existing personnel?
additions that we've requested. So we'd have to look at those again. We'd have to look at, if in this short term, or if the budget really did go down and we had better information about retirements, that we could look at leveraging that. And that's, that continues to be that problem issue, is that if I project, 5 people and then no one retires, then that's a big number.
And do we necessarily, if we had 5, say, do you necessarily have to fill those? Would it be more important to have these specialists, as opposed to say, I'm just using an example.
It's a good question. And I think some of it is about the positions that retire in reality. And are there places where we might be able to reorganize given a particular retirement? Perhaps. In the general classroom areas, at this point, I would say no, based on the distribution of the population. But again, if we had specific requirement or retirements in particular areas that we might be able to then think about differently, right this minute.
No, I don't know how many
Right.
specific, but I'm saying if.
Every time we get a retirement, we look at that.
Like a room size or, classroom size, is it gonna make it to a,
Right.
like, it's not gonna take it to 30 kids, is it gonna take it from, say,
22 to 27,
19, or
right.
that's something that's still reasonable, but you'd still get a specialist and,
Right.
The thought of adding these coaches into it's still, I still question the idea of adding ancillary staff in a time of decreasing enrollment. Decreasing population in the schools. It just seems like this is a time, and I understand your thinking and why you want these people. I have to say, in the last week, I've spoken with various people in the school system about these coaches and their roles and their usefulness and what they bring to the situation, and I didn't meet anybody who felt like the coaches were a grand addition to the education process, frankly, and that's speaking with parents and that's speaking with staff members.
well, except if your child doesn't have a learning.
How many years can you justify adding to the overhead of the schools when the population just declines year after year after
Well, that's
year?
what I said, maybe you need specialists as opposed to just a general, and I'm not taking anything away from the social studies or an English teacher, but, maybe the specialists.
Well, if
More
you
needed
can
at this
prove
point.
that the specialists are of substantial benefit to offset the cost of bringing them in and all the costs that go with bringing in new employees that will have contracts ongoing for years to come, if you can show me the change or show me facts that relate to the effectiveness of that personnel, I would be happy to see that. Because what I have heard is that it's not the best use of the money.
Is there any data that backs up that if you have these math codes or, or literacy help, it increases?
There are two ends of that spectrum. One is the tracking that we do on all kids that are in the various tiers of intervention from the intervention side, and the number of kids that would be further behind as a result of not having those interventions. So yes, we can show we can chart that progress in terms of the movement of kids' progression both in literacy and math. In terms of the coaching component, a little more difficult to demonstrate in terms of raw numbers and in terms of quantitative. It has to do more with the impact that coach has in modeling lessons and helping teachers, especially in the area of math, where I would argue that most folks, especially as we're moving forward, are not struggling, but having the advantage or the leverage of a coach to model math lessons that we're trying to teach that develop the critical thinking, the number talk, and the conceptual understanding of math through doing, not just through rote memory, is a change in instructional patterning, and that is a different, harder to quantify in terms of the benefit. And I would argue that depending on the teacher that you want to talk to or the parent that you want to talk to, if they haven't had specific benefit of the math coach being in their classroom working with them, that they may not fully appreciate or understand that. Or the flip side, if they've had a math coach that's been working with them and they're the ones who are struggling, they may not want to tell you that that's a big help to them because they got it all under control. So I think there's a balancing point there that we are seeing the benefit of the coaches and the instructional intervention for kids who need that extra support. We are tracking that data. And second, in terms of the change in instructional practice, sometimes that's the necessary impetus to be able to model those lessons from somebody who really has that level of expertise. Those positions, in some level, don't necessarily become, an infinite or a permanent position as much as they are in, moving forward with a particular curricular area. And the issue with literacy, coaching, and intervention, we've tried to combine those in a way that has benefit for both kids directly in terms of intervention and helping them get better at their skills, but also to help to refine and improve the instructional practice so that classroom teachers can do more of that intervention on their own as well. So we don't have as many kids into intervention. We also are seeing higher levels of discrepancies with a portion of our population coming into our schools, both in terms of behavioral and school readiness. So declining enrollment or not, we still have increased needs, and I don't know how else to frame that for you. But yes, there is data, and yes, there's the tangential or anecdotal evidence that the benefit of the coach relationship with teachers is in fact beneficial.
All right. So any recommendations? Ray, you threw out the 1.5%. Is that on the operating, or is that on the operating debt and capital?
I guess what I'm looking at is right now, just under operating. I think, again, the practical problem is I think a lot of what they're requesting does make a difference. I think it's important, it's good to have, no doubt about it. The question is, what are the voters going to approve? What can people be putting towards that? And so,
That's what you're talking.
and that's the problem. But last year we went through this. I think John's correct. The voters shot the budget down, and we're going to come out of it now with a 3.14% increase. It's not going to sell. So I guess my opening ante is take it up 1.5%. So take it down 1.5% or thereabouts. That works out to be about $475,000. But I'm open to what other members on the board of selectmen have to say about that. Maybe that number's a little too low. Maybe it can go up a bit more. But I'll be honest, I think it's going to be a hard sell this year.
I think it's going to be a hard sell with that.
Yeah.
We have to force the one of these.
1.5.
You think that's still too high?
I think it's going to be a hard sell at just from last year.
At zero, it's hard.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where I was starting.
Well, I understand. Remember, then, I go to some of the contractual stuff. And just with the salaries, with the certified salaries, the contractual obligation to that is $730,915 above last year. Automatically.
Right, those are beyond our control.
That's, well, and that's where I come up with the 109, because basically if you take the 958, 892 in the operating and drop the 109 out of it, you're basically down to the 849,018, which is the contractual obligations we have right now with the non-certified salaries, non-certified salaries, and employee benefits. That's what the increase is. So when you add the 109, you take the 109 off of the 958, you get back to that. Mr. Wizard? 958, 92 minus 109, 117. I'll do it right now for you. 40%. Yeah. Is that what it is? What does the CPA make? Do they make more than the first selectman? They have an increase like a CPA. Huh? Takes it down to just below 2%. About 2%.
And that sounds reasonable.
No,
And then if you do the capital,
more than that.
agree,
Capital's different. Yeah.
I was thinking outside the box.
I don't know, I'm throwing things out there.
Right.
I mean, I'm trying, again, I don't wanna impact, I'm trying to stay away from things that are gonna
I think
directly go at the kids.
Right.
to your point, I think if you have, I mean, there are some things certainly that if that is the intent, to look at trying to make those purchases at this point out of capital, there are certainly things in capital that could be done between now and the end of the school year, no question.
And those are the things I targeted when I looked at it.
I don't think
I don't necessarily think they could be done, Jack. I think they could begin the process, and the money at least has to be encumbered prior to the end of the fiscal year, right?
Yeah, I think the air conditioning piece is a harder one to put on that list.
Okay.
But I think there are certainly in the system-wide, the number, I don't know what you came up with, what you were looking for total, I didn't catch that.
So 103 total, and that was doing the Joel air conditioner.
Yeah, I would sooner look at looking at furniture, equipment.
Okay. I stay away from technology because we don't want to get into not upgrading computers or anything.
Well, no, but I mean, but some of those things can be purchased now, I mean, in
Right,
terms of
right.
that, those things
Okay.
can be done. So if that's the number between, those two, for us to,
I don't know if it is or not. I just threw it out. Ray wants to walk out here without my shoes and socks, and then,
I think he's just realistically
no,
looking at what's.
Ray, and that's the concern we all have, and I've been doing this a long time. And you hope that when you throw it, and I know this isn't a budget they just threw together and pulled out of the sky, they're certainly on their behalf are trying to address what they feel the needs of the students are and the school system itself. We're looking at the bigger picture, it's not just the school system, but it's the town. And like John, you said at our meeting last week, we bang away at the police, we bang away at public works, we hit every little department for $1,000 here, $500 here, trying to pare it down to make something that we can present to the people. And then we still hope, and like we did last year, both town and Board of Ed budgets combined were like 1%, right? And you hope that the people get off their butts and get out and support, but they don't. And are they gonna? There's no reason for me to believe that they will this year either.
Well, why should they?
Well, because you end up with about 3,000 people deciding what the other 10,000 people in town are gonna be stuck with for the next year. Which is unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
I just think.
And that's why we're trying to put a budget together that we hope that people will accept.
At least realistic,
I know.
because then they're gonna come down to shoot the town budget,
Well, inevitably, if they come down against the Board of Ed, they're gonna vote against the town. If they're coming out against the town, they're gonna vote against the Board of Ed. Usually, it's not till the second time around that one or the other passes.
You know, I gotta say this, though. I've lived in Clinton since I was 7, came with my parents. And the one thing I always thought and recognized about the people that live in Clinton is they're very generous, very concerned. If they're gonna shoot a budget down, it's not for selfish reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the economy.
They gotta pay their bills.
They gotta pay the bills, and that's the problem. And, you know, I'd love to give us a Cadillac in education, but, I think this is what we had last year said that sometimes you get a Studebaker. And, so I don't wanna put us in a car that's not safe for driving. I'd like to get us as close to the Cadillac as we can get. I mean, I got 2 kids, school-age children now. You know, but we have to be realistic in our numbers, and that's a big problem.
Right, so somebody make a motion, what do you want to? I threw out the 109, 111 plus the 103, which is 212, 117. No, it's more. I don't like that the percentages rolling aren't big on me, it's the number.
You did motion.
Somebody motion what?
No, you didn't motion.
I don't make motions. So that would be 212, 117. 103 for capital, 119, 109, 117 from the operating.
All right, well, I'll make that motion then.
Second, any discussion on that? Motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Subject to change without notice.
So,
I have to break a tie all the time. I'm a voting member.
question, just for clarification then, is
You can say wherever you want, the 109, 117, we can't give you, but that was my suggestion.
So that total number from the budget,
212, 117.
from the total budget?
The only thing you can't touch is debt service.
Right.
Okay?